Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. We're one day away from the 2-year anniversary of the October 7th attacks in 2023. Today is day 731. Last I heard, negotiations were supposed to start yesterday, but that was put on hold because Netanyahu kept his chief negotiator, Ron Dermer, in Israel past the end of the Sabbath. So the negotiations are now set to start today in Sharm el-Sheikh. I haven't heard more than that they were scheduled to begin. You'll recall, and I said this in the past days, the 20-point plan agreement from President Trump that was initially endorsed by Netanyahu on the White House steps last Monday and accepted by Hamas's political leaders. It's really just the starting point for negotiations. The two main issues that are yet to be resolved, or several main issues. Netanyahu said he doesn't agree on the two states. He said that in the White House steps, even while saying that he endorsed the agreement, and that's included in the agreement. But specifically, the details of this Israeli withdrawal. When will the Israeli military withdraw from certain parts of Gaza? When and where, the maps and the timeline, all that's yet to be determined. And then the other main issue that is yet to be negotiated is the demilitarization of Hamas. They have said they would only agree to lay down their weapons if the occupation is brought to an end. That means East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and Gaza no longer under Israeli military control. There's no way that we're on the precipice of that happening, but that's one of the conditions of Hamas's demilitarization. Now, the Israeli side is hard. We can imagine how difficult to negotiate some of the things that they need to do. Imagine how difficult the Hamas, I'm not having empathy with anyone, but the Hamas perspective. So the three next steps are actually on the Israeli side. They include no news yet on the main steps that need to be taken, deciding which Palestinian prisoners to be released in the exchange. We know that they've started working on that. Gearing up the UN humanitarian aid distribution system for massive deliveries, which was cut back ridiculously under the Gaza Humanitarian Aid Foundation. And although the Israeli lead for hostages affairs did actually start to have meetings in Cairo. Now, it must be understood that the plan stipulates the ceasefire would begin. It's going to commence when both sides agree to it, and we're just not at that place yet. Neither side has, nor will they, at least until the initial action details are worked out in the plan. Neither side has agreed, and the ceasefire has yet to begin. So pray for those conversations that are happening in Sharm el-Sheikh, on the Red Sea, in Egypt. Now, one analyst said at present, both sides have agreed in principle to the Trump plan on the basis that Israel has stopped its offensive in Gaza City. But this is not a total ceasefire, and explicitly, the IDF has ordered any attack if it sees itself being threatened or it sees itself being under attack. They also were ordered to keep control of the places that they already manifest control in Gaza City and in other parts of Gaza. But things have calmed down a bit. We've heard some reports that Palestinians are starting to move back into Gaza City. I've heard other reports that say different news. But this analyst said that the miracle is moving forward. And forgive me, I have a bit of a different opinion. This doesn't feel like much of a miracle. As I've read the news in the past several days, and as we've talked to people on the ground, and as you hear these contradictory reports, it seems like so much that's being discussed is not yet manifested. Now, I hope this is positive momentum. I hope that these, issues that have yet to be completely resolved can be overcome. But I've also heard that the Israeli military said that Gaza City is still a war zone, and anyone who's present in the parts of the city where they shouldn't be would be considered enemy combatants. In other words, killed. Gaza is still a disaster. Hamas has also denied the report that was published in Al Arabiya earlier, which claimed that the group had begun collecting the bodies of hostages who'd been killed and that they had agreed to hand over their weapons to the joint Egyptian-Palestinian police force. Hamas's key demands of the ceasefire talks include a full halt to all Israeli military operations. It includes the withdrawal of troops to positions that they held during the last hostage deal and the suspension of Air Force and drone activity. Sources in Hamas told the Saudi news channel that information. President Donald Trump has said that Hamas will face complete obliteration if the group refuses to give up power and control of Gaza. One of the things I would tell President Trump, if I had the opportunity to, Hamas has nothing left to lose. They don't care if hundreds more, thousands more Palestinians are killed. Hamas has already lost so much. Their key leaders, they have nothing left to lose. U.S. President Donald Trump So complete obliteration was Trump's word. The special envoy to the Middle East, Witkoff, and Jared Kushner are expected to participate in those negotiations that were supposed to begin today in Sharm el-Sheikh. Again, the first phase of the deal is talking about hostage release, prisoner exchange. This is being mediated by Egypt and Qatar. The Egyptian Foreign Ministry is actively involved. Hamas on Friday expressed willingness to release the remaining hostages, but did not comment on any other part of the U.S.-backed ceasefire plan, such as disarmament. Meanwhile, in Gaza, attacks continue. Now, the death toll today, at least as of the time of my writing and news, was significantly less. It was less than a dozen people. It's still a dozen people being killed, but some of them were aid seekers. The war on Gaza to date has killed a minimum of 67,160 people. Now, over the weekend, Israeli airstrikes killed at least 36 Palestinians on Saturday, according to local health officials. 18 died in different sporadic incidents. 18 others were killed in a strike on a house in the Tufa neighborhood in Gaza City. The strikes occurred after Trump's call on social media on Friday evening for Israel to stop bombing Gaza. Trump on Saturday said he appreciated that Israel had temporarily stopped bombing. Israel also deported 29 activists who were detained last week for taking part in that Samud flotilla. Israel has deported 170 of the 450 activists that were detained thus far. Sirens yesterday were activated in the southern Israeli city of Eilat. This was following a drone infiltration, but according to the IDF, they said that drone was most likely intercepted. And in Syria yesterday, they held their first parliamentary elections since the fall of the Assad regime. A vote count was ongoing at the time when I looked this up. CNN reported that voting in 3 provinces dominated by Kurdish and Druze factions was postponed because of security and logistical concerns. In terms of international news, my apologies. I did not hear about that horrific synagogue incident in Manchester, England until the weekend. And so I haven't talked about that. On October 2nd, 2 men were killed, 3 people seriously injured in a car ramming and stabbing attack outside of the Heaton Park Hebrew Congregation Synagogue. This was in Manchester in the UK. The attack occurred on Yom Kippur, it's considered the holiest day of the Jewish year. The perpetrator was identified by police as a 35-year-old Jihad al-Shami, a British citizen of Syrian descent. Counterterrorism police in the UK stated that while he was not known, he might have been influenced by extreme Islamist ideology. Al-Shami was on police bail for an unrelated rape allegation at the time of the attack. The timeline, according to police, was that he first appeared acting suspiciously outside the synagogue, was confronted by security, and then left, and he returned in a car about 15 minutes later when he began his attack. Al-Shami first drove the car into pedestrians outside of the synagogue and then exited the vehicle and began stabbing people while he was wearing a fake explosive vest. Armed officers shot and killed him at the scene within minutes of receiving the emergency call. But ABC News reported today that Manchester's Jewish community still feels let down by Britain after the deadly synagogue attack. Politicians and other leaders have failed to reject anti-Jewish speech or to protect Jews from hate crimes. So said the people waging this complaint. We're Jews, but we're also English. We've lived in Manchester for 150 years. We belong here, Simon Burton, who worked in sales, told the Associated Press. We feel as a community that we're not always listened to. We feel let down. On Thursday, when the people gathered at Yom Kippur, the attacker drove his car into the building. At that point, they knew that one person had been stabbed to death. A second person seemed to have been inadvertently shot by the police, and 3 other people were seriously injured. Meanwhile, South Africa has intensified its campaign to isolate Israel. You'll recall that they were the ones who took the step of bringing the case of genocide, that Israel is perpetuating genocide before the International Court of Justice. 2 years later, South Africans are saying that's not enough. The coordinator of the South African Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions Movement, Roshan Dadu, said that the government must take material steps. We still have an embassy here in Pretoria. We're calling for that to be shut down and to end trade with Israel. It's horrific that South Africa's coal is still being shipped to Israel to support its electricity grid, which fuels the genocide and fuels illegal settlements. Secretary Rubio in the U.S. said that the U.S. is aiming for a quick deal to return the hostages. The next phase has to deal with disarmament. Setting up a new government in Gaza will be more challenging. Trump said yesterday that talks with Hamas are advancing rapidly. That was even before the talks and negotiations really continued. He said, I'm told the first phase should be completed this week, and I'm asking everyone to move fast. That was Trump on social media. Speaking to CBS's Face the Nation, Rubio commented on President Trump, who said that PM Netanyahu took the war very far, saying that whether one believes the war was justified or not, one could not ignore the impact it's had on Israel's global standing. And then Trump told Netanyahu on Friday evening, following Hamas's initial positive response to the ceasefire plan, I don't know why you're so effing negative. This is a win. Take it. That was Trump to Netanyahu, according to Axios. The sources said that Netanyahu had told Trump there was nothing to celebrate and that Hamas's position meant nothing. And Israeli officials said Netanyahu viewed Hamas's response as a rejection of Trump's plan. And Trump told Axios on Saturday that Netanyahu's fine with it. He has no choice. With me, you just have to be fine. Jordan's king and President Trump also discussed the U.S. Gaza peace plan. That was on a phone call, according to the Jordanian royal court. And a top Vatican diplomat, this is Cardinal Parolin, who Churches for Middle East Peace has met with previously. He's the Secretary of State of the Vatican. He said that the carnage in Gaza must be condemned. It is unacceptable to dismiss the death toll where there as just collateral damage. Parolin said the war has brought about disastrous and inhumane consequences, adding he was struck by the daily death toll among the Palestinian population, including so many children whose only fault seems to have been being born there. We risk becoming desensitized to the carnage, Parolin said. It's unacceptable and unjustifiable to reduce human beings to mere collateral damage. It's clear that the international community is unfortunately powerless, and the countries truly capable of exerting influence so far have failed to stop the ongoing massacre. It's not enough to say that what is happening is unacceptable and then continue to allow it to happen. The words of Cardinal Parolin. Also from the Vatican, His Holiness Pope Leo has called on world leaders to commit to the peace or a peace deal in Gaza. He was speaking at Mass at St. Peter's Square. He condemned the immense suffering of Gazans and the rise of anti-Semitic hatred worldwide. Pope Leo XIV called on political leaders to commit themselves to the ongoing Israel-Hamas peace negotiations, which have shown a significant step forward. The Pope expressed his hope that the deal would be finalized as soon as possible, calling his listeners to remain united in prayer for a just and lasting peace. In his remarks, the Pope continued to be saddened by the immense suffering of Palestinians in Gaza, and he greeted a group of pilgrims who were in the Vatican from Bethlehem. He also voiced his concern over the rise of anti-Semitic hatred around the world, mentioning the particular attack last Thursday on the synagogue in Manchester, England. That's the update from the last 24 hours. May God go before us. In the name of Christ, amen.